Hello, welcome to a new edition of the Right Wing Populist Podcast. I am the Right Wing Populist. So today I want to talk about two main topics. Number one, a new Harvard-Harris poll came out with results regarding whether or not people approve of Trump's job performance, what people are thinking about the government shutdown, etc. So I want to break down some of the new findings. And the second topic is I want to talk a little bit about the Virginia elections that are happening next month. Yesterday, I talked about New Jersey and its governor's race. I want to talk about the Virginia governor's race and some of the other races that are happening in Virginia, because there have been some interesting developments with one of the races that I think is pretty disturbing. So I think we need to talk about that and sort of ask yourselves, what the hell happened to Virginia? For those who don't know, and if you're young, you probably don't know this, Virginia used to be a red state. It used to be a rock solid red state. I mean, Virginia went for decades without voting for a Democrat, at least on the presidential level. It had gone decades. Obama ended up winning it in 2008, and ever since then, it's become pretty much a reliable blue state. Sometimes it's close. You can elect a Republican governor if a Democrat's, the current occupier in the White House, like Youngkin did in 2021, but it's become a blue state, and it's a shame. But anyway, well, first though, before we get to Virginia, I do want to talk about this big new Harvard-Harris poll. And Harvard-Harris, their track record's solid. They did pretty well in the last presidential election. They did have Kamala leading throughout much of the election cycle when she replaced Biden. But at the end, they did start to show Trump with a bit of a lead. They basically had it as a tie. Trump ended up winning nationally by 1.5 points. That's pretty fair. A lot of polls had Kamala still leading the national vote by the end of the election cycle. And they did have Trump leading in many of the swing states. They would often, I think Harvard-Harris often would do one of those polls where they combine the 7 swing states into one result, which is sort of silly in my opinion, but for what it's worth. Harvard-Harris, they're a solid poll. They're not great, but solid, you know. It's sort of like sex with a girl you've been with for 10 years. It's it's not great, but it gets the job done. Harvard-Harris gets the job done. So I want to go over some of these results because I think they're pretty illuminating. So the Trump's approval rating is at 46% approve, 50% disapprove. And which, that's sort of what you would expect, He's slightly negative, but not, he's not 10 points negative like some of the not so reliable polls will have him at this point. And this is a good question. Is Trump doing better or worse than Biden did as president? 52% say better, 48% say worse, which that's decent, although that's a 4-point movement against Trump because last time we did this poll, I believe in August, 54% said Trump is doing better and only 46% said he was doing worse. So you've seen movement toward worse, which is, not the best movement you would want. And for who is to blame for the government shutdown, 53% say Republicans are to blame, 47% say Democrats are to blame. So that's not great for Republicans, obviously. Another question. Are you satisfied with Trump or wish Harris had won in 2024? 51% say satisfied with Trump, 49% say wish Harris had won. Which again, that's basically what the presidential election results were. Roughly 2-point victory for Trump, 1.5 is what Trump actually won. So that's, more what you'd expect. And they also, there was a set of other questions basically saying, do you support certain policies the Trump administration is pursuing? And pretty much all of them are positive. Now, some of these questions are like, do you support lowering prescription drug prices for Medicare recipients and low-income patients? 86% approve of that, obviously. Some of the more controversial ones is, do you support the strikes on Iran to destroy the nuclear capability? 52% say support, 48% say they did not support that. Sending in the National Guard to American cities to stop crime, it's barely positive. 51% say they support, 49% say they did not support that. It should be noted that, again, certainly when Biden was still the candidate, Harvard-Harris was definitely leaning heavily towards Trump. And they've also very pro-Israel. But this poll, Harvard-Harris always has positive results towards Israel. Like, they had a question, like, do you support more Hamas or Israel? It's frankly not the best way to put that question. I'm not a fan of Israel, but I don't support Hamas over Israel. Hamas, the biggest, the tragedy of the Palestinians is the fact that, they elected Hamas back in, I believe, in 2007. It was like a plurality victory, a very weak victory, but the Hamas was elected, and it's been a disaster for the Palestinians. It's been a disaster. I think how Israel has handled the Palestinians is disgusting. I think what Israel is doing in Gaza is terrible. I think it is a genocide. At least it's a technical genocide. Frankly, who really cares what the hell you call it? They're killing way too many innocent people, children, babies. I don't give a fuck if you call it a genocide or not. What Israel's doing in Gaza is horrible. But I also will say this, and many people who are critical of Israel are like, sometimes they feel reluctant to say this, but I'll say this, I don't care. Hamas is terrible too. They're partially responsible for what's happening down in Gaza. Again, I think Israel, they've gone way too far. But, what gave Israel the pretext to do what they're doing in Gaza was the attacks from Hamas on October 7th. There was no need to do that. It's just terrible. One of I think the biggest terrorist attack in Israeli history. They killed and captured civilians, including, I believe, children. So what Israel has the power here, they could stop, and I hope this peace deal that, the ceasefire peace deal that Trump's pushing will come to fruition. I really do. So I give Israel most responsibility, but Hamas, if they had not attacked on October 7th, Israel would not have had the pretext to do their ethnic cleansing that they're trying to. Now, again, Israel blunted the responsibility. They're the ones who are trying to do the ethnic cleansing right now. I want to be very clear. But Hamas is they are not doing the Palestinian people justice. And, so I'm getting a little bit off topic. This wasn't really supposed to be about Israel, but, I just had to point that out because we're talking about Harvard-Harris, and I feel like some of the questions they asked relating to Israel were misleading. The question is, do you support the Palestinians or Israel? Not whether or not you support Hamas. There are many people who are very supportive of the Palestinians who hate Hamas because Hamas is they're not representing the Palestinian people in a way that's actually good for them long term. So anyway, interesting polling results that we see here from Harvard-Harris. They're not bad for Trump, but it should be pointed out that again, almost all these numbers, even the positive numbers, they're shifting away from Trump. Trump's approval is slipping a bit. People thinking he's doing a better job than Biden, those numbers are slipping a bit. We're seeing movement away from Trump. And that's partly because the economy is, pretty fragile right now. It seems like we got some good numbers on inflation. I'm going to do a deep dive, probably write an article about that tomorrow, maybe do a podcast about it. But it seems like yesterday we did get some good numbers on inflation. But look, the job market's pretty rough right now. Anyone who's looking for a job is aware of this. It's a fragile economy. There's no question about it. And I don't blame the tariffs. There are arguments. People will say that the tariffs is the reason why the economy's fragile right now. I don't buy it. It could be, but I don't buy it yet. So we'll have to see. So the economy's fragile. Again, a lot of the polling, if you look at a lot of the polling, when Trump's approval really started to dip was when he struck Iran, as I like to call it, Iran. When he struck Iran, Trump's approval rating started dipping in a lot of these polls. Look, you can't run for 8-10 years that no new wars, I guarantee it, no new wars, no regime change wars, wars are bad, wars are lame and gay, lame plus gay. You can't run like that like Trump did for 10 years and then start bombing countries just because it benefits Israel. Okay, you can't do that. And now it looks like Marco Rubio's maybe trying to push Trump to do regime change in Venezuela. It's to take out Maduro. It's like, what are we doing here? Trump, back in, I think, May or June, whatever, when he was doing a visit of the Gulf states, I believe he was, and just Middle Eastern, I think he was in Saudi Arabia at one point. He gave a big speech saying how United States will do no regime change wars, none, zero, none. And it's like, okay, And ultimately, we didn't do a regime change in Iran, although I think Israel's trying to push us back into that conflict. We'll see what happens. But what, you're going to do now in Venezuela to take out Maduro because of what, drug cartels? I don't know. Seems kind of dumb. So hopefully so look, I'll say this though. If Trump's able to get that ceasefire peace deal and get the hostage back and end the ethnic cleansing in Gaza, Trump's approval will go up. And it will help Republicans in November with some of these state races that are, and that leads us to Virginia. I have to talk about this. So for those who don't know, Virginia, one of those states that have off-year elections, and the Democrat candidate for Attorney General, the nominee, Jay Jones, got caught sending vile text messages to, I believe, a reporter, talking about how he supports, not that he, I guess supports, but how he would like to kill some of his Republican opponents so they can understand, I guess, how terrible gun violence is and how these, but he was calling Republicans fascists and they need to, understand and experience violence to understand how bad it is. It's one of those gay, liberal type of messages. And he's fantasizing about Republicans that he, in the state house in Virginia and his opponents, how they should be murdered and how his family should be forced to watch them get murdered, including the children. This is the Democrat nominee for the Attorney General in Virginia. And, there's a push to get him out, but as far as I can tell, Abigail Spanberger, who is the Democrat nominee for the governor of Virginia, I think she's been silent so far. And, the Republican candidate, who's an African-American woman, her last name is Sears. I'm kind of blanking on her first name, but Sears, Mrs. Sears, she's trying to, kind of connect her opponent to the Democrat candidate for Attorney General. But a new poll came out yesterday, and, Spanberger is up 10 points over the Republican Sears for the governorship of Virginia. There are many other polls that have the race at double digits. And the Democrats will probably replace their Attorney General candidate, but, the fact that, it's very possible Virginia votes for the Democrats by a double-digit margin, that would be a bad sign for Trump and his administration. I said that the Republican does well in New Jersey yesterday on the podcast, so that'd be a good sign for Trump. I will say this, if Virginia votes for the Democrat by a double-digit margin, that's a bad sign for Trump. Trump lost Virginia by double digits in 2020, only lost it by about 6 in 2024. So if we see movement closer to the 2020 margins, that would be a sign that at least Virginia they do not like what Trump is doing. Now, it should be pointed out that Virginia is one of those states where a shutdown really does affect them. Because part of the reason why Virginia's become so democratic is so many people work in D.C., they live in Northern Virginia, in those Virginia suburbs. Used to be Republican in the Bush years. The Obama years, they flipped Democrat and they've stayed Democrat and gotten more Democrat overall. There are a few counties that shifted back to Trump this past election, like Loudoun County. If you know, you know. If you're involved on election Twitter and you saw the Loudoun County numbers drop on election night 2024, that's how you knew Kamala was cooked. If you know, you know. That's all I'm gonna say. Loudoun County, Virginia. If you know, you know. You knew Harris was cooked by like 6 p.m. Pacific. Okay, or 5 p.m. Pacific. When the Loudoun numbers dropped, you knew Kamala was cooked. Again, if you know, you know. Election Twitter. I'm a nerd, what can I say? So, hopefully this scandal with the Attorney General Democrat candidate could maybe affect the governor's race also, But the reality is, even if this Jones guy stays in, the guy who's fantasizing about killing everyone who has an R next to the name, I think he would still win. Because I think the governor, the Spanberger, the Democrat running for governor of Virginia, I think she's going to win by close to 10. And I don't think you're going to have that many split ticket voting. So even if this Attorney General candidate, Jones, the Democrat, who, wants to kill everyone who's not a communist, I think he would still win because of the Spanberger's coattails. It's just a sad state of affairs in Virginia. And where is Youngkin? I don't even know. Youngkin's supposed to be this popular governor. Where has he been in all of this? I feel like he's been, I haven't paid super close attention, but clearly he has no coattails because, again, Sears, the Republican governor candidate, I mean, she's just getting crushed. And Youngkin's supposedly popular. It just sucks. For those who don't know, I mean, you can't serve consecutive terms in Virginia. So Youngkin, even though Youngkin his first term, he can't run again. He has to wait another election cycle. I mean, if he was the candidate, he would have a fighting chance. But you know what? To be fair to Youngkin, to be fair to Sears, to be fair to all the Republicans who are running, not just the Attorney General, but Lieutenant Governor in Virginia. Virginia is a blue state, okay? And we have a Republican in the White House. That's a recipe for Democrats winning Virginia, especially with a government shutdown in Virginia. Recipe for disaster. So the fact that we're going to have a candidate, if he's not forced to drop out, still probably win, who, fantasizes in a semi-erotic way of killing all of his opponents, his Republican opponents. Sad state of affairs in Virginia. Sad state of affairs. So anyway, I just wanted to cover some of these new polling results. I thought it was interesting. Please subscribe to the podcast and the website. Link to the website in the description. If you're listening to on YouTube, should be also available on Spotify. I'll double check that. But anyway, please subscribe, whether it's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the website. Thanks for listening, folks. Bye-bye.